I've got one. Which two actors played the Riddler?
Holy Guadalcanal, Batman! What now?
What now? Why, everything's new as Batman and Robin battle crime with a battery of wonderful new Batnovations. Be with Batman and Robin in color, of course, on ABC.
Time's up, citizens. The answer was Frank Gorshin and John Astin.
Holy recall!
When last we saw our beleaguered battlers, they were slowly sinking in a bitter batter of Riddler quicksand. A grim and gritty end awaits them unless something awfully good happens awfully fast.
Welcome back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave Podcast. It's your old Bat chum, John S. Drew here. And guess what? We have an old Bat villain returning, finally, to the Batcave Podcast. We've got a new Riddler episode. But the Riddler's looking a little different this time, and we'll get into that in our discussion. We've also brought back an old Bat chum here, but he's not different looking. He's still the same old person he always was, the wonderful Mr. Jim Beard, editor of Gotham City 14 Miles. Hey, Jim.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I mean, I'm looking forward to this. It's funny, in watching this particular episode with our new Riddler, so to speak, John Astin, I tried really hard, and it's hard not to do, to go into this with certain baggage because the ghost of Frank Gorshin hangs over it all.
Yeah, and that's inevitable, but like so many of the episodes that we've talked about, there's things in this one that are very cool, actually. And you know what? I think this episode has taken a lot of knocks that maybe it doesn't fully deserve. So it'll be really interesting to go through this because there's some really great bits in here that are actually historical for this show.
I'm on the same page you are. I think in watching this and trying to be actually more critical than emotional, because that's really what it comes down to. I mentioned before we started this that, I also at the same time was watching the Riddler episode, Frank Gorshin's from the first season, dealing with the wax and such. And it's hard not to look at that because I've said it before on other podcasts. When Julie Newmar got switched out with Eartha Kitt, for some reason we were okay with that because Eartha Kitt went and owned it. We've had three different Mr. Freezes. Each one sort of brought it to a certain level of success, some more than others, but there never really was one where we just sat there and went, no, you can't do that. That's wrong. This has just been, when it comes to John Astin, who's playing the Riddler in this particular episode, it really gets a lot of knocks. And like you say, as we'll go through this, you're going to find that there is a lot going for it. And hopefully maybe we can, change the minds of a few people and they might address this episode again in their viewing.
Yeah, this one hits me particularly hard. Anybody who knows me knows that Frank Gorshin as the Riddler is my favorite villain. He stands head and shoulders above everybody else as far as I'm concerned. So, and I picked this episode to be on with you, on purpose, maybe to try to work through these issues. But I think that what people have to do is when they watch this is ask themselves, and to me it's a similar case to Lee Merriweather and Julie Newmar. Lee Merriweather takes a lot of knocks for simply not being Julie Newmar. Ask yourself as you watch this episode, is John Astin, getting short shrift here just because he's not Frank Gorshin? Let's keep that in mind as we work our way through this.
Okay, let's do that. Let's get into this episode here. The two-parter, we're back to two-parters once again, Batman's Anniversary and a Riddling Controversy aired on February 8th and 9th, 1967. We open with the teaser, this time starting right at Wayne Manor as Dick is trying to determine the maximum number of pieces yielded from a 6-cut circle.
I don't know about you, but I don't watch a Batman episode, for a whatever that is, a geometry lesson, or it's not boring necessarily, but it's pretty pedantic. We're getting the full, like, draw this line and cut this, and it's a strange opening.
It's a very strange opening because usually we're so used to getting a crime, and the only crime here is watching as Bruce tries to explain this, and Harriet's looking on so confused as though this was Common Core.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I love it when they hand it to her and say here you do it, and they run off, and she looks to Alfred, like of course, and Alfred's probably just like oh here we go again, I have to hold this lady's hand while they run off to save the world.
He doesn't get paid enough.
No, not nearly enough. But what we go on to is really something very cool as far as I'm concerned. But go ahead.
It's very cool because, they get the call from Gordon. And again, it's different because Gordon's like, I can't talk about it on the phone. This is supposed to be the secured bat phone line. And it's like, just meet us at this location and such. So, Bruce is like, okay, off we go down to the bat poles, and we don't even get the usual, we're going to go through the whole atomic batteries to power. We cut right to, in this teaser, Batman and Robin arriving on location, and, Gordon and them leading them into this large party room where they're surprised by a celebration of Batman's anniversary.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Batman and Robin. As mayor of Gotham City, it is my privilege to officiate at this luncheon, one of many to commemorate a day cherished in the hearts of all Gothamites. A day when a man known only as Batman donned cape and cowl for the first time and appeared in our midst to preserve law and order. In appreciation of all the Cape Crusader has done for our community, members of the Gotham City Dairymen's League have donated $200,000. Enough new bills, as a matter of fact, to fill a golden calf. The proceeds from this luncheon and others in your honor will be donated to your favorite charity, Batman. Miss Anna Graham, Milkmaid of the Month, will make the presentation. The calf, please.
This is fascinating because so few times in this show do we get any hint about something that's happened before the show.
Yes.
And here, we're actually having them acknowledge the first appearance of Batman in Gotham City. And I don't know about you, but I want to know more about this. In this universe, how was it that Batman first appeared? And you would assume that Robin is not with him, that, just like in the comic books, Robin came a little bit later. But, to me, it's like, forget about all of this Riddler stuff. They don't go into it like you really would want to go into it.
No, they don't. They don't. And you're right about that. They missed a great opportunity here because, other than, the cute little thing at the end there when they're all standing up and clapping and we see some of Gotham City's finest, including Burt Ward's and Adam West's stunt doubles among the crowd.
Oh, is that right? I did. Yeah. Well, we get Mayor Linseed. That's a reason for celebration, right there.
We get Mayor Linseed, who says a few words, and there would have been the perfect opportunity for him to tell the tale of Batman's first appearance, the first crook he caught. What was the deal?
Yeah, I love Adam's reaction to the whole thing. And it's hard to kind of categorize. Batman's kind of doing this little humble thing. Nodding and tipping of the cowl thing to it, but you kind of got to wonder what's going through Batman's mind. Did he suspect that they might do something for this? Obviously, he's going to be aware that it's his anniversary. I would have loved it if we could have gotten a little bit, more out of him. And how long ago what anniversary is this? How long ago was it that Batman first appeared in Gotham City? A lot of cool questions and very few answers.
Well, you got to figure, in order for it to be something momentous, it would have to be at least 5 years, if not 10 years. I think anything longer than that, if, like you're saying, we're celebrating Batman's 20th anniversary, he's getting a little long in the tooth then.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Adam was no spring chicken when he did this show, so I doubt if it was 20 years. So I'm going to guess that it's either 10 or 5, and I'm going to guess maybe it might even be 10.
Right.
That would make a lot of sense because that gives more time to have Robin come into it.
Yep.
But if that's the case, that's how many more adventures that we never saw. The mind boggles at this point.
And like you say, we don't really get an opportunity to explore any of this because now we get into the plot itself, in which, the mayor points out that the dairy farmers are donating $250,000 stuffed in a gold calf, and it's brought in by, and it's like nothing, no alarm bells, nothing, Miss Anna Graham.
Yeah, right. I love that name. That's got to be one of the better. You don't get a whole lot of puns like that in the mall's name.
No.
So and this, of course, is the beautiful and talented Deanna Lund. She hasn't been lost to the Land of the Giants yet. That comes a little bit later. This is pre-Land of the Giants, but it's nice to see her in this.
Yeah. She comes in with the calf, and Batman starts to make his speech, but he's interrupted by an explosion and green billowing smoke. And that's finally when he starts to, because he makes a comment about the green smoke as the fire department quickly arrives, but it's clear they're not there for the smoke or any fire that didn't seem to appear. They grab the calf, move towards the window, and I got to admit, I did love, as Batman and Robin are trying to get through the crowd, they stop and...
Riddler!
Salutations and consolations, anniversary boy.
Riddler, that money is for charity.
I'll see that it gets into needy hands. In the meantime, I suggest you look for an engaging page to herald the next of my anniversary surprises. Ta-ta!
John Astin, with the flourish of the coat, reveals, it's me underneath this, I'm the Riddler. I did like that.
Yeah. It's an interesting one where villain appears first, in disguise. But immediately we see that Astin is going to follow Gorshin's flair and egotism. And that's going to come later. But as we'll see, he's going to try to start to make it his own. But yeah, it's a great beginning at least.
It is. And, he leaps out the window. It's spectacular. We see, him landing with the safety trampoline net thing at the bottom.
Yeah.
It's all well choreographed. They hop into a red rescue truck because, they're dressed up as firemen. So Batman and Robin pursue it again. Anytime I can get outdoor chase scenes, I am all for it.
Good. Yes, I agree with that one completely.
The only thing is that the Riddler, and this is actually, if I recall correctly, this is a common ploy that we see in 60s television, is the whole deployment of a similar truck. So, of course, Batman has to stop when he sees two trucks going off in two different directions. And he's like, we can't risk stopping the one that's actually, on a job.
Yes, yeah, right, absolutely.
It's a nice touch. And I did also like that Batman picks up on Riddler's closing remark when he's leaving about how, there'll be a clue heralding the next, step in my plan and such. So he buys a Gotham Herald.
Of course. This is where we're starting to connect in with the comic book story that this is based on. This is actually based on the Riddler's first appearance in 1948 in Detective Comics. So far, it doesn't match the beginning of that story, but we start to do so at this point because there's this crossword puzzle. Now, in the actual comic book story, it's a crossword puzzle that's put up electronically on the side of a building.
Oh.
But here it's just in the newspaper, and I understand, we have a budget on the TV show, but at least it's starting to connect in with this original story.
Now that's funny because I'm just thinking in terms of this is Batman's anniversary. We're just coming off of the 1-year anniversary, and we celebrate. We don't celebrate with a Riddler story for the actual 1-year anniversary, but when we do celebrate with the Riddler, we actually go back to his first story in the comics.
Yeah, and I can't help but say it's kind of a shame that they finally have gotten around to doing this story, which is the Riddler's first appearance, and we get John Astin and not Frank Gorshin. I think that would have been really cool, if it had been Frank Gorshin, but it is what it is, and I accept that. I'm just so glad that they actually, at this late in the game, are adapting one of the original stories.
Yeah, there were a couple of episodes in the second season, the later half of the second season, where they did fall back to the comic books once again. I guess possibly after seeing that they were failing at doing it themselves.
Yeah, I guess.
So we cut back to the Riddler's hideout, the No Man Jigsaw Factory, the soon-to-be opened, as the sign even says, No Man Jigsaw Factory.
Yeah. Finally, it's not one of these derelict, warehouses, or it's just gone out of business. This looks like it's something that's actually going to open. It's actually going to be in business. So I guess things are looking up in Gotham City, maybe.
Businesses are starting to come in. Mayor Lindsay's attracting some of the bigger names.
Yeah. He's probably up for re-election.
That's right. There you go. So we see the Riddler reveling in his victory. This is still all in character with what Gorshin did, the whole, admiring himself, and they're all cheering for him and stuff. It harkens right back to, I think even the first episode he was kind of like that.
Tell me again, you cringing knaves. Am I not the king?
You are the king, Riddler.
King, king, king! Breeze there another mortal who has absconded with a $200,000 anniversary present from under the cowl of the Cape Crusader?
No, Riddler, no one.
And who else would be clever enough to turn in a false fire alarm?
So a real rescue truck would run interference for my escape. Ha ha! What a marvelous piece of riddling genius that was. But I've only started with the Cape Crusaders. I'm going to confound them with conundrums, unnerve them with enigmas, perplex them with puzzles, until they wish they were dead.
And then what, Riddler?
Then my jigsaw jackanapes. Then I'll grant their wish.
Yes, very much so. But again, Astin is kind of making it his own. One assumes that this is the script that was intended for Gorshin, that there were no changes made. So Astin's sort of interpreting it himself. The one thing that strikes me is yes, there's this egotism going on, and that's a complete Gorshin, thing right there. The Riddler is very fond of himself. My take on it is that Gorshin tended to fall onto the cerebral aspects of how great that was within him, where we get this kind of weird stuff from Astin that's almost more like physical. That crazy thing that he does where he does the arm curl.
Yes.
And placing his fist on his forehead kind of a thing. It's almost like he's saying to his hench people, don't admire my brains, but admire my physique. It's a little weird, it's a different interpretation in a way. Are you getting that too?
I did get that too. I mean, yes, both, and in this case, he's trying to mimic the physicality of Gorshin, but it's all wrong the way he's doing it.
Well, let's be kind. He's not as wiry as Frank Gorshin. It makes me wonder how he felt when they presented him with that costume. He had to know what he was getting into, obviously, when he took on the role. Let's just say he fills the costume differently than Gorshin.
Well, it's funny because in watching the Gorshin episodes, I never really paid much attention to the belts, sort of the centerpiece around the waist and such on Gorshin. And I realize it's the exact same thing. It's not like it's anything different, but suddenly you realize that it's more like a corset on Astin.
Yeah, I'm sure it worked that way. The other sad thing is that he gets a Riddler prop and Gorshin didn't. He gets the cane.
He does.
with the question mark on the top of it, which is so funny because that's such a standard thing later on in the much beloved Batman animated series. You know, much later on, that's a mainstay of the Riddler is the cane with the question mark on the top of it. Again, it's like I want to grab people who love that and say, do you want to know where that began? We need to go back to the 60s TV series. It's a really cool thing, and it makes me wonder if Gorshin would have gotten that prop at this time if he had been in this episode, or if that's something that they specifically did for John Astin.
Well, you know, it's funny because you mentioned that, and I'm thinking about, like, the different stories we hear about why Gorshin didn't appear, whether it's he was just unavailable at the time, as he points out in the Cinefantastique magazine. They quote him there saying he just wasn't available, and, you know, they had to go ahead. They wanted to do a Riddler story. Of course, that just seems odd because it's like, you know, why now after an entire season do you decide to plow ahead and do a Riddler story when he didn't appear the whole season? Then there's the other stories of just that he'd been holding out for more money. And then there's the document that Big Al Archive has of a letter from Dozier's company saying, you know, much as we love you, but we're not paying twice as much as the other actors are getting for their roles, you know, so we wish you the best of luck. So, you know, that seems to point to the fact that he was just holding out for more money.
It doesn't surprise me that, you know, we get those kind of combative stories going on. Gorshin's probably going to try to make himself look as good as possible, you know, after the fact. Even though he did not distance himself, you know, from the show, he accepted it as part of his, you know, his history and his career. So, I mean, I tend to go with that document.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's a trumped-up document. And we know that Gorshin had as much of an ego probably as the Riddler did, you know. So I would tend to go with that, you know, that he was trying to hold out for more money. But he does come back. I don't know what happened, you know.
Exactly. Maybe in seeing somebody else take the role, it just hurt him too much.
Yeah. The other thing that strikes me is that we're talking about how Astin looks in the costume the suit, the actual suit jacket and pants combo that Gorshin did would have suited John Astin better than the tights. And it's interesting that they didn't go to that. My assumption would be that they would have had to perhaps create a whole nother costume because for it to fit John Astin, that probably Gorshin's, you know, and it was simpler to just make the tights, you know, outfit for Astin instead of the suit. But I think that would have looked much, much better on him than this.
I agree with you. I think that would have been a better call for him. I've got a theory, though, and I want to share it at the end of the episode, why I think they didn't go with the suit.
Okay.
Great. I want to, because that actually ties in nicely with my entire end review when we talk about at the end of the show. So, you know, he grabs a wetsuit, which has a big question mark on it, and declares that he and his men are going to a banquet as we come to the end of Act 1 of this episode. And Act 2 opens with Batman and Robin in the Batcave working on the crossword puzzle. You know, they've got it all set up on the blackboard there. No Bat computer. They're doing it themselves, which is really good. I like that.
Yeah. You know, you got to keep those brain cells, you know, working. So
yeah.
This is obviously another, you know, little lesson for Robin here that we don't always have to rely on the Bat computer.
Right. Right. And based on the clues, they determined that the Sons of Balboa are having a banquet with the proceeds being donated to Batman's charity, another one of the anniversary events. Now, they get a call from Gordon, who tells them that there was a water main break under Matron Lane. And I have to wonder, though, how many takes Hamilton did in order to say that, because he just says it so fast and so smoothly. You know, the water main under Matron Lane.
Hey, he's a professional.
He is.
Years of experience. You know, he probably nailed that thing in the first take.
It was twisting in my head as he said it.
Complete professional, that man.
This triggers something in Batman that he figures they need to investigate that first. So he has Gordon and his men go and protect the Sons of Balboa.
In the comic book, it's the big civic charity banquet on Basin Street.
Ah.
So there's no this Sons of Rocky Balboa thing is just for the TV series.
We get the entire bank has been flooded where the water main break is, and Riddler and his men are robbing it. They're in their wetsuits and scuba diving gear and stuff, and I love it.
Wait, you're going into this too lightly.
Too lightly.
This has got to be either the greatest bat fight ever or the most horrible bat fight ever. I've been waiting to hear your take on this one.
Well,
you're going into it too lightly. This is a momentous occasion.
Well, here's the thing. As a kid, I never liked this episode because as a kid, I did have the baggage of it's not Frank Gorshin. I mean, even then, I was like, what is this? Gomez is the Riddler? I mean, I knew the Addams Family, so to me, I couldn't separate the two. And then you add to it this lame underwater, as a kid now, lame underwater bat fight scene where they're moving in slow motion like it's the $6 Million Man. So now it's like you add that to it.
Well, you should like that then, right? You're the $6 Million Man guy.
You would think I would, but I didn't. I mean, that was just another strike against it. Watching it as an adult, I love this fight. This whole thing is so... You said, is this the best? If not the best, it's definitely one of the best. I mean, it's not like, a bat fight like, the Mad Hatter when they're on the water tower, or for that matter, the Joker and Penguin in the last episode you appeared in the Batcave. It's not that kind of epic level, but it gets to be one of the best.
Worked like a charm, Riddler. Why not? There's a difference between a Batman and a Frogman. One quick stop, and then let's go dry our money.
Simply because of the choreography of the way they're moving about. And in particular, there's my favorite bit of the whole thing is when Batman and Robin slowly back up doing the backstroke to prepare themselves for the next, strike and such. And the music, I mean, that is original Batman music.
I know.
For this fight.
You don't know how long I've waited to hear you say those words. I mean, look, you're talking an environment like never before, original music, original sound effects cards with some animation to them.
Yep.
And something's going on here because any part of this show that someone separates and makes a separate YouTube video for, that something momentous and historical is going on here because you can watch just this fight on YouTube. It's not just a bat fight, it's bat art.
It is.
I give them a lot of credit for this because it took some balls to do this, and I give Adam and Bert a lot of credit for going along with it. And the funny thing is that while this sort of evokes the original comic book thing, there's no actual fight in the comic book thing. They figure it out. Batman's wrong. He realizes it's not a banquet, but a banquet. And they rush over to the bank, but Batman and Robin never even get their boots wet in the comic book story. It shows the Riddler in a diving helmet and air tanks underwater opening the safe and then getting away. And it's just done in a couple of panels, but Batman and Robin never get to actually fight with him underwater. He doesn't have any pinch people in the comic book story. But thank the Lord that we actually get this underwater bat fight.
Oh, now that's a shame. I would have loved that line, and that would have been perfect. It was a banquet. I love that.
I know, and you know what? It's like it's written for the TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah, they run into the banquet, and they're looking for the Riddler, and a cop runs into the room and says, "Mayor, a water main has burst. It's flooded the bank nearby." And Batman says, "A bank flooded? a bank wet. That's what the Riddler really meant. He tricked us neatly. And then they realize that Riddler is already robbing the bank and gets away with the money.
See, and now they missed really a beat there, because the whole thing with Batman, just saying, well, we'll go to the flood instead of after we've just determined that it's the Sons of Balboa. Like, there's no real explanation. It's just, we'll go investigate that and you go guard the Sons of Balboa. I was like, okay, because this isn't going to be the first time in this episode either where they just sort of fob off the other possibility on Gordon and the others and head off. And it just seems like Batman's, oh, wow, you're a genius, but, like, we don't see the genius. Whereas if we could have just had him in the Batcave go, or a bank wet, Robin, let's go, boom.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. Again, it's tailor-made for the show. So what William P. D'Angelo was thinking, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know, but wow. Missed a beat there, missed a beat. And you know what also this bat fight doesn't have, because a lot of, most of them, just before the fight, there's always the boast of the villain or the boast of Batman and Robin that, you're going up the river or something like that, or, you thought you had us here. We don't get that, because it's just they come floating in, sort of walking slowly in with the respirators on, and boom, bat fight begins. The music just starts.
Yeah. I rewatched that scene just for this podcast, and you don't know how long afterward that music stuck in my head. That I kept doing the music over and over again. I just, they missed a beat in the script thing, but then they pile in, they give you original music and original title card. So I guess it's a balancing act here.
Right. Well, in the midst of the fight, Riddler gets the drop on Robin, removes his respirator, giving Riddler and his men a chance to escape as Batman goes to rescue Robin, and we come to the end of Act 2. Now, Act 3, we see the duo exiting the bank, and they're dry. Whereas at least when the Riddler and his men came up from the manhole cover, you could see they were wet.
It's something about the bat costumes, I guess.
Okay, I guess. And they find a clue attached to the bank door from the Riddler. The clue being, when is a man drowned but still not wet? But you know what? Something else though I will say I also like about this episode is that the riddles are solvable. And even if you can't personally solve them, when you hear the answer, it makes sense. Whereas towards the end of Gorshin's run in that first season, they were throwing out riddles that made absolutely no sense.
The only possible answer.
The only possible answer. And then Gordon just with that look on his face. Yes.
Love that little look.
Back at Riddler's hideout, we see the money hanging out to dry and being pressed to look neat. I like that. Laundering money.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Now, this is another story, like the Catwoman story, where our main villain has, the recent Catwoman story, where our main villain has a plan to purchase something, so they need a certain amount of money. In this case, in the previous story with the Catwoman, she needed $1 million to buy the plans to Gotham City Gold Mint, the depository. Right. Now, Riddler needs $3 million for Professor Charm. That was his name, right? Charm?
Charm, yeah. It's a strange name.
Yeah.
I don't. Professor Avery Evans Charm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was actually because I asked that because when Riddler says his name first, it sounded almost like he said Professor Avery Evans Charmed. Like he was charmed to see him, and that the guy's name was actually just Avery Evans.
Avery Evans.
Because he only refers to him as the professor for the rest of the episode. We never hear him referred to as Professor Charm again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a strange name that doesn't seem to really have anything to do with anything. It's not. There's no real pun there, and it doesn't really seem to fit in with his character.
We get, though, this great little comedic scene because, the professor arrives and, Riddler needs still to get another $1.5 million. He's got $1.5 million done. in order to buy something from the professor. We don't know exactly what. It's a weapon, though. And, he has his reasons for working with Riddler, too, which is something I like. It's not just simply, I need money or something like that. He wants...
I can't wait to put my demolacurarizer in your hands and watch the members of the Gotham City Science Institute quake at my handiwork.
They still won't let you join, Professor?
I'm a high school dropout.
So am I.
Is that another lesson in there for the young viewers?
It could be.
Hey kids, stay in school kind of a thing.
Yep.
It's one of those beautiful little drop-in references that I don't know if it, may have gone over the kids' heads, but just one of those funny little things, probably supposed to have been some sort of message.
I liked it, though, because honestly, here was the one time I could say I was glad that John Astin was doing this bit, because I don't know if Gorshin would have been as laugh out loud funny, because, he's like, I'm a high school dropout, and there's Astin going, so was I. And his head just drops.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I don't know if Gorshin would have been as funny. I laughed out loud. It made me smile.
We'll never know. Will we?
Okay, now we come to a scene that needs a little bit of dissection here, because we cut back to the Batcave. My first question right off the bat, there's William Dozier reading the riddle for us, not Batman himself.
When is a man drowned but still not wet?
And I have to wonder, because as we're going to see when we get into episode 2, I'm wondering, was there just some bad audio takes on this entire story altogether? Because in the second episode, we get some really ropey ADR going on there, especially with Burt Ward in Commissioner Gordon's office. And I wonder if they just looked at it and said, well, this is really crappy, and it just would be easier to just have William Dozier do a voiceover rather than try to get, Adam West in to repeat the clue. Because it makes no sense. It sticks out like a sore thumb that he's reading it and then going, and Batman and Robin are trying to solve. And it's like, well, we see that. It's like, we get that you fill in the gaps, but you're not filling in any gaps here.
Do you feel that they're getting sloppy, by this point in the show, or that the care is starting to slip away at this point? I don't know.
I don't know if it's so much about the care. I wouldn't go that far. That would be kind of harsh. Could it be sloppy? Sure. They were working under enormous pressure. I mean, when you think about it, they were doing an hour-long show, essentially, but they were doing it in half-hour installments. They were like almost doing 2 shows at once.
Yeah, it's true.
There was a lot of pressure. I remember seeing somewhere about how, someone chastised Adam for having some cue cards around. One actress or actor chastised him for, I think it was in his own book, because he needed some help after a while. I mean, it was just so much dialogue. And, of course, he's the star of the show. So he would have cards at the ready.
And especially since a lot of time there's dialogue that are tongue twisters.
Right.
We were talking about Neil Hamilton there, for a moment. A lot of tricky dialogue or with, pseudo-scientific, babble kind of things in there. So, and we've always heard about the pace of the filming and that it could be grueling, So, I mean, I'm not an actor, so I don't know, but it just sounded more like snobbery, to me than anything.
Right. Well, Alfred shows up, reminds Batman that he and Robin have to pose for the figures that will go on top of the giant cake being made in his honor for the anniversary. So we're back to the anniversary again.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. It's like Batman agrees to do this, but to me there seems like there's more important things going on here than having to pose for the, marshmallow figures or whatever they're going to make of that. But he goes along and he does it.
He goes along and he does it because he knows how important it is for Gothamites in general, and he's not going to let them down. He's he's had moments like that before where it's like, oh, this is kind of vain, this is kind of egotistical, I really don't want to be involved with it. But I mean, even just the simple thing of running for mayor, he just but in the end he knows it's for the betterment of Gotham City, so he goes along with it.
Yeah. Maybe he feels like it'll be like a nice distraction, or that he can clear his head, and think better about the Riddler problem while he's standing there posing for these figures.
Well, I think he makes a comment about that as they're climbing the stairs to the lift that's going to take them up. I think he makes a comment to the effect of, like, the fresh air will help us figure this out. But before they leave, there's this interesting shot. And in our last episode, Robert Long had pointed out in our Joker Penguin episode how we get a brief glimpse of Batman's, hall of trophies and such, although it's not much of a hall. It's just a shelf of trophies. But
I'm smiling as you're leading into this because it's another historical moment for the show, in that it evokes something from the comic books, although on a much smaller scale, like you just said. On
a much smaller scale, yeah.
It's another fascinating bit, and you got to wonder, why was it never done again? Such a huge part of the comic books, and we just get this little glimpse of it, and really that's it. I love it because we've all been recently on Facebook trying to identify everything on the shelves.
Yes.
It's really funny.
Yeah, and in the show notes, I'll put up the picture I managed to grab from, one of the HD stills and such, which cleans it up nicely so you really get a good look. I mean, there's stuff from the recent Marcia and Penguin team up. There's stuff that goes all the way back to Bookworm with the Bat Magnet. Yeah. It's just wonderful. And in addition to our discussions on Facebook, Ben Bentley, who recently appeared on that Penguin Marcia team up, also pointed out over at the Batman 66 message board that they had pointed out some things that we had missed out on. So, I think we've managed to cover just about every item that we see there.
Yeah. And it gets more fascinating when you think of that it was most likely just thrown together.
Yes.
TV and film production has changed so much that today that would have been designed and cataloged and, very meticulously done, where at that point it looks like they haul in a shelf, they say, go run to the prop room, grab as many of the things that you can find, and we're going to throw it on these shelves, Probably no notes were made about what was what or anything, but it looks like they got it all right because there are tags there that say the names of the villains for the most part.
Right.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's like if they were going to use it again, it would look completely different because, again, they probably just threw the stuff in there for whatever reason, and that was that.
There's a third season episode of The Bionic Woman, in which Jamie and Oscar are in one of the vaults of the OSI down below in the basement and such. And this one in particular is where they store all of the items that are from previous missions and stuff like that. And I in doing this now I'm like, really keen on going back and screen capturing, because they actually show 3 different walls of stuff. And the only things I recognize, one is the Fembot mask, which is the trigger for the whole episode because it's the return of the Fembots in this particular story. Yeah. But if you look in another corner, you can see the Alex 7000 computer monitor thing just sitting limply on a shelf there, and it's kind of sad looking.
Yeah. The one purpose that the trophy shelf, not trophy room, but trophy shelf serves is again, we get this glimpse of history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the beginning, we have the reference to this is the anniversary of Batman's first appearance in Gotham City, and now we get this, very quick, glimpse at a look back through the show. So, I don't know if it was planned that way.
Mm-hmm.
If they said, let's put this here because this is an episode about his history, I don't know. Again, it's been, almost 50 years now, and you'd really love to sit down with some of these people behind the scenes and say, how did that come about? Was that a spur of the moment thing? Is it in the script? How did you put that together? And I think they would probably laugh at you and say, well, we just threw that together.
Yeah.
That was nothing. It was a little throwaway bit, But as fans, we all love those throwaway things.
As fans, we love it, but I also have to wonder, in this day and age, we can really appreciate it because of, especially now with the cleaned up and restored DVDs. Yeah. But, watching it on your TV in the 60s, are you even going to get that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I love it. Somebody, I think it was on the Facebook thing, somebody said, wouldn't it have been great if they had a backdrop that showed the penny and the dinosaur?
Yeah.
A backdrop painting.
Yeah, that would have been cool because, like you say, then if you figure 10 years, it's like, oh my God, at some point Batman had those adventures just like in the comics. So Batman and Robin arrive at the, it's sort of like a backlot area where they've got this giant cake, and you got to wonder how that was baked in the first place. But there it is. There it is.
Don't ask questions like that.
Don't ask questions.
That way lies madness.
Yes. They are, led to the lift, and as we see, one of the bakers who's sort of, trying to stay in the background with his back, but he turns around at one point and looks, is the Riddler, complete with the mask on and all.
Yeah, he has his mask on. I don't know, again, if that's like an ego thing for him or what. Yeah, he has to have that on.
And the two, step onto the top of the cake. Now, mind you, why did they have to step on top? Again, there's the madness, because it's like, couldn't they just do the sculpting from...
I know. And they don't question that, do they?
No, they don't. We're going to walk across the top of our cake.
Yeah, and stand there, yep.
Yeah.
We're singing, Batman.
Congratulations, Bat Brain! You've risen to the occasion.
I can't get my feet out of this goo. It's like quicksand.
It is quicksand, Robin. Riddler's own prepared mix, cleverly disguised as strawberry icing.
That's right, you sinking saps. Quicksand, 15 feet of it. Call it an anniversary present.
That scurvy fiend.
Sorry I can't stay around to see you descend into oblivion, pastry faces. But I have an appointment to keep for some money at Gotham Square Park. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary, dear Batman. Ta-ta. Happy anniversary to you.
I did think it would all end differently, somehow less ignominiously. To drown in my own anniversary cake.
Drowned? But in quicksand?
Yes, old chum. Death in quicksand is technically drowning.
That's it, Batman.
What, Robin?
The answer to the riddle. When is a man drowned, but still not wet? We'll be drowned, but in quicksand, so we won't get wet.
Excellent. You've done it again.
A lot of good it'll do us now, though.
Can this be true? Batman and Robin caught in a quicksand cake mix? Is the party really over? Will Happy Anniversary be an epitaph for the dynamic duo? To see if they sink or swim, tune in tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah. This is a death trap that I would almost go so far as to say that Batman and Robin deserve this one. Because again, you're not questioning any of this. Why do we have to go up to... the top of this cake at all and stand there? So they almost deserve this one.
They do. Now,
but the way they get out of it is fantastic.
The way they get out of it, but I before they get out, I just got to say the opening shot. After we do the the recap and the opening credits and stuff, and as the titles are going, we get that wide shot of the giant cake, so we can really appreciate the cake. Yeah. Batman and Robin up at the top, slowly sinking in, and down at the bottom, waiting below, the Batmobile. I don't know. That image struck me as I watched it.
Because we get that pullback, you mean?
Maybe. I don't know. To me, it just really gave you a sense of scale. Maybe that's what it is. Our two little Batman and Robin on top of a giant cake, and they're sinking it, and there's the Batmobile down below. It's just a lovely little shot.
And again, that's something they didn't necessarily have to do.
No, No, they didn't have to do it, but it was. I liked it. It just stuck out to me. Now, Batman informs Robin about things he's been recently reading about quicksand, and if you don't move, you'll actually just sort of settle in, and they do. They actually sink just to below Robin's lower lip, around the chin.
Luckily.
Batman wants to activate the bat rockets that they've now attached, been testing these out in their boots and such.
Heel to toe bat rockets.
Heel to toe. That's all you got to do.
Heel to toe bat rockets.
Oh, God. And I find it funny, though, because he keeps talking about how as long as we make no sudden movements, and fine, okay, they're very carefully, moving their hands to activate the trigger in their utility belts. That's fine. But the funny thing is, Burt Ward is not really staying still because he keeps bobbing his head in a nervous way as Batman's talking. And I'm like, you're going to go under.
Well, you know what? That speaks to Robin's character. Robin's this bundle of energy that can barely be contained. He's leaping and jumping, all the time and speaking very quickly. And in a way, again, it's like if he sinks, then it's his own damn fault for being, such a bundle of energy. I have to say that Batman's technology has really advanced here because if you remember the bat rocket, however long before, when he had to put him on the bottom of the elevator.
Yes, in the Catwoman episode.
They're big, big tubes. Now he somehow got them into the soles of their boots.
Well, he's always perfecting his devices, as we also saw in the Marcia Penguin story. He's got the remote control for the Batmobile, where it used to be this big clunky device with a wheel on the bat cycle. Now he's got it miniaturized onto his glove, and he's able to just, with a touch of a few buttons, program the thing to move.
My guess is that in the meantime that Batman made a trip to Japan and has learned miniaturization, skills there that he didn't have before, because this is one heck of a miniaturization. We're talking, a foot-long tube, thing to, I don't know what, in the soles of their boots. But anyways.
Is that where he met Deathman?
Yes. Yeah.
So they take off, and, the rockets launch. Now, I got to ask, I tried, I paused it. Is that them? Are those dummies? Is that Herbie and Victor?
This is a hard one because I thought the same thing myself. I almost think that it's Adam and Bert. I mean, they would have had to, put them on, wires and everything. I don't know what to say about this. My gut tells me that it's actually Adam and Bert, because it's so quick.
Yes.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. And it also begs the question. I mean, we don't get that at all because, again, I keep referring back to this because there are some similarities there. In the Penguin Marcia story, Penguin launches Batman and Robin with a catapult, and they need the Batmobile to catch them. Do they have parachutes when they're done with the rocket? Or are they like Iron Man suddenly, like Tony Stark, learning how to have controlled landings?
I don't know. That's a good question.
But I do like the next scene because we find out that Riddler has been busy while this is all going on. He's stolen another $1 million from Gotham State Park. He's gone back to his headquarters, and he hears on television a joint statement from the dynamic duo and Gordon, and he has to laugh at that because he's like, oh, joint statement, right, because I know they're dead.
Yeah, right.
It's a nice touch.
John Astin's Riddler is happier than Frank Gorshin's Riddler.
Yes.
He's a little more jovial and getting a kick out of things. Frank Gorshin's Riddler tends to turn sour very quickly, and that's another thing that I've noticed here. But that could be, again, the script. You can't help but wonder, would Gorshin's Riddler have seemed odd in this script, i.e. not acting like the Riddler normally acts? Or would he just have turned it into what he was normally doing with it? But again, just a little aside there, that struck me throughout this whole thing, that Astin's Riddler is a much happier guy.
I think you're right about it being the latter, that Gorshin himself would have twisted it to suit him more and worked with the words, but he would have just because we've seen in recent episodes that Penguin, Catwoman, Burgess Meredith, Julie Newmar, they got to do certain ad-libs that added a little substance to their character. I wouldn't be surprised if Frank Gorshin would have been allowed to do the same thing. I think in this case, Astin was just working off the script. Whatever you say, boss, I'm here to work. Because, think about it. He's only been out of work a few months. Addams Family was canceled. And they quickly snatched up him and Carolyn Jones for roles in this series.
Yeah, absolutely. You also have to wonder if Astin thought that maybe he was going to just take over the role. Did he think that maybe he was going to come back? Or did they make it clear to him that this was literally just this one-shot thing? Fascinating. And this is the second actor who refuses to shave off his mustache for the part. Right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I'd forgotten about that.
Suddenly the Riddler has grown a mustache. Don't forget that. And has more hair.
And has more hair, yes. Darker hair at that, too.
Yeah, and darker hair, too, yes.
So he only needs $500,000 to complete his goal. Now we
Chump change,
exactly. Yeah. We cut back to Gordon's office where Batman is working out Riddler's next move, which is to steal Anthony Aquila's money from his home. Now, this is the scene I was talking about earlier, where we see some really ropey ADR, because when Burt Ward at one point is, and the camera's right on him, you could see the words do not match what he's saying. I mean, they try to. It just doesn't sync up right at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is another instance where first they work out that it's the Eagle's Nest, this new restaurant that's for the rich and famous. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, Batman makes a turn based on something Gordon says and goes, or maybe it's Anthony Aquila. You know what? We're going to go there. And Gordon, you and your men go to the Eagle's Nest. And it's like, you actually made a decision to go someplace else based on something Gordon commented on, not anything to do with the clue itself.
This is fascinating because this is all pretty much lifted directly from the original comic book story. There's a giant puzzle that the Riddler sends in giant trucks, and that has to be assembled in a stadium. Batman's way up in the stands with a microphone, and he's directing the policemen to assemble this giant jigsaw puzzle. It actually says, "Tonight I shall rob the Eagle's Nest." It's funny, it's not a riddle, though. It just says, "Tonight I shall rob the Eagle's Nest." So Batman figures out that it's the Erie nightclub, E-Y-R-I-E nightclub, top of downtown skyscraper. So he sends Robin to check that out. But he goes to the nearby mansion of a wealthy art lover, Harrison Eagle, and finds the Riddler there. Back over to you, John.
I find in those early issues, because I've been reading some of those old detective issues as well, and the early Batman ones, that Batman was willing to send Robin off when they needed to divide their forces. Whereas here in the TV show, he's always reluctant to do it, or very seldom willing to, I should say. I mean, there was that time he sent Dick Grayson, undercover agent, in for the Joker episode, but most of the time he's like, yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah. That's a great point, because you're absolutely right. The Robin at this time, 40s, 50s, into the 60s, much more capable and solo character, actually had a solo series,
right?
Of adventures, and actually looks younger, a younger Robin, and he's running around doing stuff on his own. Yeah, in the TV show, Batman is far more protective of Robin.
So at Aquila's home, Batman...
You mean Fidel Castro.
Fidel Castro.
That's what you meant to say, because that's who it is.
Well, that's who it is. I mean, and it's interesting. That's the second time that they've actually made a sort of commentary or poked fun of or whatever, like actually made some sort of a reference to real world politics. I mean, up until this point, all our political figures, all our countries and stuff have all been fake. And I mean, Aquila himself is from a fake country, but clearly they're sending a joke here by having Fidel Castro, because he looks just like him. Previously, there was a comment to the effect that Robin said, "I'd rather the communists were here than Penguin," which I thought was like, wow, that's telling.
that whole thing looms so large, even, still at this point, we're into 1967 at this point, the memory of the Bay of Pigs and all of that is still very fresh in everybody's mind. And you see a lot of this in 60s things, 60s productions, where if they're going to have world leaders, they got to have somebody that looks like Fidel Castro. And I think it's because he's so visually recognizable that you get it instantly. The cap and the green fatigues and the cigar and the beard, and you go, well, that's Fidel Castro, of course. But it's interesting how he and the communists and everything are still looming so large at this point that you put them in a production and you get it immediately. You know what's going on here.
Right. And in the midst of all this, there's some really silly bits here, but at the same time, I kind of like them. I mean, as Batman and Robin are making their way towards Riddler, they're using machetes because Aquila's home is set up like a plantation, so they gotta cut through the foliage.
That's not silly. That's practical. Come on. Wait, calling out silliness in Batman is like saying, water is wet. Or banquet.
Right, or banquet.
Yeah.
Riddler, come out of the bush and surrender. As a duly deputized peace officer, I order you to drop that sack and give yourself up.
Possible. 15 feet of lethal quicksand.
They sure don't look defunct to me, Riddler. Or demise, departed, and dead.
How did they survive?
Right was on our side, that's how.
Get them!
We do get a brief bat fight. Well, of course, it's Batman and Robin. They're not going to use it, but the machetes quickly disappear when the bat fight starts. And we also get movie music, music, for this.
Well, that helps them because they had to compose and conduct all that new music for the previous bat fight.
Right.
Save some money, by doing that. And yeah, those machetes have to go away because you can't have obviously very sharp knives wielded against people in Batman.
Right. No, but I think it's funny that, Riddler's men are willing to fight, even though at the beginning they're holding the machine. But they just put them aside, and it's like, okay, we're going to fight. I guess, they trust in the fact that Batman's an honorable man and isn't even going to threaten them with the machete.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. They know that they can rely on his honor.
I also did like the puzzle that Robin gets to solve, the whole trap with Aquila.
It's way more elaborate in the comic book. Harrison Eagle is actually in the middle of this gigantic puzzle thing it's hard to even describe. It's one of those like Jenga things. It's all these wires and rods that are all fit together in this big jumble, and he's in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where, like, if you pull out one wrong, it's going to crush him.
Right.
Kind of a thing. And they have to figure out how to get him out of the middle of that.
So once the fight is over, and once Robin, figures out the puzzle, because Riddler and his men are able to get away, because that's the distraction. If they don't get him out of that puzzle trap, there's a bomb attached with it. And we learned that there is no bomb. There is no riddle left behind. In fact, all that the Riddler leaves behind is a donkey's tail for Batman. I like that. I actually did like that.
Yeah.
Where you can pin that Batman.
Well, again, is this Riddler having more fun than the Gorshin Riddler?
I think he is.
Yeah.
I think he really is.
Yeah, maybe he saw a shrink, since the last time we saw him. Maybe this is, a very just a different, personality coming out here or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Back at the hideout, we find out that, now that he's got the money, Riddler can purchase the weapon, a demolecularizer. And I have to say that very slowly because I always manage to...
I know, yeah, the demolecularizer.
Another tongue twister there.
This is the demolecularizer?
Mm-hmm.
You want me to pay $3 million for an 89-cent pencil flashlight?
That 89-cent pencil flashlight, as you call it, Mr. Riddler, is in reality a highly sophisticated weapon which took a lifetime to develop. Powerful enough to disrupt the molecular structure of matter yet so simply designed that it can be recharged by plugging it in any household electrical outlet.
But we do, you mentioned the suit. Even though we don't get to see the suit, we do get to see one piece of the suit because the demolecularizer is tested by shooting at the green derby that the Riddler wears.
Yes.
And it disappears.
Yeah. Now, is that a little hint, or is that a little note to viewers that Gorshin is gone?
Ooh.
Look at it that way, possibly. So I'll just leave that right there on the table and let everybody chew on that one.
I'll add to that because Astin says, well, bring it back. And he goes, no, it can't come back.
Wow. Could have been a message to Frank.
Yeah.
Too. Yep.
Yeah, maybe they were thinking in terms of Astin could be our new... I mean, Astin was going to be free. He had no other jobs going at the time.
Absolutely right.
A telegram is delivered to Batman, and, it's a threat from the Riddler. If the city does not give in to his demands, he will make police headquarters disappear, and then... building after building will disappear. Nice way to end Act 1 in high threats. Now he has the weapon, so we have to act on that. And we get a new riddle from the Riddler as well in this, which Batman and Robin... Actually, it's interesting because we're in the Batmobile. Batman and Robin are working out the riddle, but at the same time, Batman's also working out, math computations in his head.
Of course.
Yeah.
This is what he does, right?
Uh-huh. And, we also get the introduction of the remote bat computer now attached to the dashboard.
36 inches in a yard or 3 feet.
And who has 3 feet? You?
No one.
Or no man. I seem to recall a recent announcement of a factory opening by that name. Robin, activate the remote bat computer again.
The No Man Jigsaw Puzzle Factory on the corner of Shady Glade and 5th.
Excellent. Commissioner.
Yes, Batman.
Could you arrange for the immediate delivery of 4 100-pound sacks of sodium dichloride to the Batcopter? I'll explain later.
Consider it done. Anything else?
Yes. Do not, I repeat, do not capitulate to any of Riddler's demands until you hear from me under any circumstances.
You have my word on that, too, Batman.
Good.
What are we going to do with 4 100-pound sacks of sodium dichloride, Batman?
Checkmate Riddler. Hopefully.
Remember we were talking about how things have been miniaturized? Remember the remote bat computer in the Batmobile was in the trunk before.
Yes, it was, right.
So now we've shrunk it down and attached it to the dashboard of the car itself.
Well, the first hint that it's not in the trunk anymore, I guess, would come in the Joker Penguin episode because of Joker Penguin and 5, 6 goons all hide in the trunk.
Right.
So we know that remote bat computer thingy is no longer in the trunk, obviously.
Right.
So it has to go somewhere. So it's on the dashboard now.
Now, this is the funny thing because it's okay, Robin works out the whole No Man's, jigsaw puzzle factory, that's Riddler's hideout. Batman figures out that in his head, and they're all doing this in their head, they need 400 pounds of sodium dichloride. I guess after all that computations and thinking things out, then we need to turn to the Bat computer just to find out the location of where No Man's jigsaw factory is.
Right.
Yeah. But I like this because, Batman wants those 400 pounds of sodium dichloride sent to the Batcopter, which means we're going to get another view of the Batcopter.
Yeah. You got to get that in there.
Got to get that in there. Yeah, true. Well, they get that in there, and there's a surprise other Bat vehicle at the end of the episode, which I wasn't expecting.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So we cut back to the hideout, and we see Riddler talking about how and I don't get this entirely. He placed the weapon in the headquarters, or did he place a remote unit in the headquarters? Because I'm like thinking if he put the pen, I mean, I get the whole thing that he says he plugged it into a wall because if I remember correctly, Professor Charm tells him that's how you recharge it anyway, is just plug it into any common wall outlet. So, which I thought was cool. But then it's like you took a $3 million weapon and left it in Police Commissioner Gordon's headquarters, and you're trusting that you're going to be able to pick it up afterwards to continue your reign of terror?
I get the sense that is what it is. I don't think there's a remote unit, like that. I think that the professor would have charged a lot more,
right,
to have a remote unit. So no, it's the actual device. And again, we have the virtually no security whatsoever police headquarters.
Yes,
yeah, a weapon of mass destruction, within it, and not just within it, but within Gordon's office.
Well, they haven't learned after the whole Joker Penguin story with Joker getting into his office several times.
No. That could be an advertisement for, Gotham City Police Department. We never learn.
We never learn. Oh. And then we cut back and we get our footage with the Batcopter flying across the city, seeding the clouds with the disodium chloride. And then we cut to, and this I thought was just interesting, we cut to outside the factory. And it's not the Batmobile that drives up, it's the Batcycle.
No time to use the stairs. We'll have to try the bat rope.
And why is that?
I don't know.
I'm guessing that, they said, we spent the money on these things. We should use them.
Our telephoto lens is providing the view of police headquarters which you see on your screen. Except for Commissioner Gordon, Chief O'Hara, and his elite bomb squad, the building is empty. All we can do is watch and wait.
Watch and wait, Gotham City. Ha-ha! There's more to come.
As the seconds tick away, the clouds above police headquarters seem to be darkening as though a storm were imminent. Just 5 seconds to go. 4, 3, 2, 1.
What happened?
The demolecularizer.
It didn't work.
I knew it was a cheap flashlight. Flashlight!
Wrong again, Riddler. Didn't your mother ever tell you not to play with electricity?
You two! How did you do it?
The supercharged electrical power of that lightning bolt neutralized the effect of your fiendish weapon.
How did you know the lightning would strike at the right time?
We arranged for it.
Cloud seeding with 400 pounds of sodium dichloride. Fortunately, my calculations proved correct.
As usual, your riddles led us right to you.
You've made the mistake of being predictable yourselves with your legendary window entrances. Riddle me this. When is a floor like a puzzle?
Again, we get a bat fight.
Yep. Good for you.
Yeah, well, good for me, except for one thing. Now, you couldn't tell this in the previous bat fights because one, they're in the wetsuit, and the other one, the foliage kind of blocks John Astin. But when John Astin fights in this one and his stunt double is substituted for certain scenes, he looked a lot like Hitler. I'm sorry, but he looked like Hitler.
Boy, I can't say that was on purpose, but maybe there's just no getting around that. I don't know. I mean, he has a full mustache, so what?
Yeah. Okay. Just the way the hairline was, and it's just, oh no.
Nice catch, Chief.
Let go of me, you blue-coated baboon!
I'll bet she's the toughest one of the bunch.
She's the only one still kicking.
It's a quick fight. I mean, it's anything spectacular. I actually do love the very end because, Anagram tries to make a run for it and she's caught by O'Hara and she's squirming in his arms and stuff. And Batman and Robin step up to them and Robin's got this smart aleck comment or something and she kicks him. And I love, because you got to look fast. You might have missed it. Batman sort of has to hold Robin back. He puts his hands out to him like, all right, easy, and the look on Adam's face is like, all right, this could get ugly. Almost like it wasn't planned, that kick.
Well, again, this goes to the thing that I've been saying all along, that how unrestrained Robin is. And it's no wonder that Batman keeps him close at hand, at all times. Because it's one of those wonderful little things about Burt Ward's Robin, that he's a ball of energy, he's a loose cannon, he has a terrible violent streak, within him, and that he has to constantly be taught a lesson or reminded of things, constantly. I love that about his Robin.
Well, we get an epilogue, and of course we've got to finish the story arc with Professor Charm, who has turned back the money that he was given because he realized it was for children's charities and he felt bad about it. But that's actually going to work in his favor. It puts him in Batman's good graces, and when he pays his debt, he will get a chance to work for Bruce Wayne and be able to join the Science Institute of Gotham City.
He's a very interesting character, and you almost kind of wish there was more of him.
Yes.
In that, because in some ways you would expect it at the end to have them come down very hard on him.
Right.
But they don't, because he feels bad, the professor feels bad. Again, I mean, it could have gone either way. So I find that a very interesting scene, that they bothered to do so much. I mean, it's a brief scene, but they bothered to do so much with him, and that he almost gets away scot-free. But if you think about it, he was in cahoots with a major villain. He took a lot of money for a device that he knew, could be used as a weapon.
He did. I mean, there's definitely, you could definitely look at like where his moral ideas lie in the end. But there was that part of me that was like, in the end, his motives for doing what he did was not evil. His whole thing was, I just want to be respected. But sadly, he's willing to do it at any cost, even if that means turning over a weapon to a major villain. That doesn't make him the best kind of person. But like you say, you're right. And for some reason, I don't know why, but as a kid, you mentioned how you wanted more. That triggered something in me, that I seem to remember wanting to see, or thinking I saw, another episode in the future with him teaming up with another villain. But I know it didn't happen.
I was just about to say, I wish that he would have come back. What a wonderful little thing that would have been if Batman used him as a resource in the future. Does he do a little time, whatever, and then he goes on to, to the Wayne Science, whatever it is. That would have been interesting to check back in, with him. But there's other little scientist guys like him throughout the show, so maybe that's where you had that idea come from.
Maybe, yeah. Well, there was that scientist in the Mad Hatter episode, Professor Overlook.
Yes. Again, I'm thinking more about this guy's name. This would have been a good name for somebody who was like a sorcerer character, or a wizard, or a magician, or an illusionist, Charm. But again, it's a weird name for a scientist.
It's funny. I was going to bring him up anyway. We might as well, since we're talking about him now. Martin Kolsleck is the actor's name. And while I know I've seen him in a number of other things of television in the 50s through the 80s, I can't think of one off the top of my head. I mean, if I go through IMDb, I'm like, okay, I remember that. He was also a character actor who had appeared in a number of movies in the 40s. Now, he's got this weird distinction. Because of, his accent and such, obviously in movies after World War II that dealt with Germany and such, he would play German characters, in various movies and such. He played the role of Joseph Goebbels in 4 different movies.
I know. I think that's really... Well, that's funny because you were just talking about how Astin looked like Hitler or the stunt double, And then, Martin was born in Germany and escaped the Nazis, and then he ends up playing Nazis, and plays, Hitler's propaganda guy right there. Really, really fascinating. The way, the paths that these actors took, and then they end up in Batman, and they have these just really interesting, rich histories to them when you really start to look into them.
Yeah. let's, I haven't done this in a while because usually with the recurring villains, we don't have to get into it, but we got to talk about this. We got to talk about the Riddler because, in every respect, had Gorshin played this role, I could see him playing him the way he was written. The only thing is, like we've discussed, he would have twisted certain things around because he's still egotistical. He's crazed, but here's the difference between Astin and Gorshin. Astin's craze is like a happy craze. It's like he revels and he's enjoying. And Gorshin does do that, but Gorshin could turn on a dime. Like, I would never trust Gorshin's Riddler with anything. I would just be... Oh. He scares me. And I think that's the difference. The difference is John Astin's Riddler didn't scare me.
He doesn't have the Gorshin laugh. The charm of Gorshin is that you assume that Frank Gorshin really was a criminal because he looks like one,
he does.
And he acts like one, and he talks like one. I've often said, given a choice to having to be stuck in a room with Frank Gorshin's Riddler or Cesar Romero's Joker, I'll pick the Joker any time. You do not want to be in the room with Frank Gorshin's Riddler because you have to think that you're probably going to get your throat slit at some point. Astin is a kinder, gentler Riddler.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily bad. It's just different. I'm always going to go to Gorshin's Riddler. You have to sympathize with Astin, that he has to follow up, that magnificent performance of Frank Gorshin. But again, it's not necessarily bad. It's just different. It would have been interesting to see if he came back, if he could have developed it further.
Well, that's the thing. I almost wish he had been given that chance because you're right. I mean, the thing is, had he been Riddler from the start, he would have been fine. I mean, I don't know if he would have ever had the opportunity to elevate the Riddler the way Gorshin did. I don't know if the Riddler would be as important a character had Astin played him. It would have been along the lines of, okay, he's pretty good, just like Vincent Price is pretty good as Egghead, or even David Wayne as the Mad Hatter, although David Wayne is the only thing that really elevates the Mad Hatter episodes in my estimation, watching them now and talking about them. But I've never cared for, and here's the thing, I've never cared for any other portrayal of the Riddler since then. I really wasn't that keen on the Riddler in the animated series. I didn't like Jim Carrey in Batman Forever. I see now in recent weeks there's stories about Jim Parsons making a play to be the Riddler if they ever bring him into any of the Batman movies. To me, it's like, you're just never going to top that. Whereas even as much as like Cesar Romero, I loved his Joker, you could see Nicholson, you could see Heath Ledger. Each one of those are different. It's just nobody's ever done, in my opinion, a definitive Penguin or a definitive. I mean, there are ones I prefer. Don't get me wrong, I prefer.
Sure,
but Gorshin just, like I said, he scares me as the Riddler. I would never want to be. If I saw the Riddler and I saw Frank Gorshin as the Riddler, I'd run the other way because I'd be like, no. Whereas I might be just curious to walk up to Cesar Romero and go, hey, that's really your mustache.
Yeah. They took a character that only 3 appearances, if I'm not mistaken, ever in Batman comics.
Right.
And chose to start off the show with him and put this incredible guy in the role. And you're right, no one ever topped that. Yeah, he puts on a full performance. He's absolutely not walking, through the
No,
thing.
not at all.
He's not necessarily stretching out on it. He's trying to do his own version of the gestures and the primping and preening and all of that. He doesn't attempt the laugh, which I think is very, it's either clever of him or the producers, director, whomever, to not have him try the Gorshin laugh because that's something that just wells up out of Gorshin naturally.
Right.
But I wouldn't have been opposed to seeing, more of Astin. I'd love to have seen him in the Riddler suit, the suit jacket and that whole outfit, to see, how he would have looked on that. But yeah, overall, I'm always going to go back to Gorshin.
Well, all right. I said I was going to save that for the end here when it came to the suit and such, and my theory on why the suit didn't show up. Because if you put him in a suit, All right, he didn't shave the mustache. He's trying to, get into this feel of the Riddler, but really in the end, with the smiling and the preening and stuff that he does, he comes across a lot like Gomez. Yeah. If you put him in the suit, you would have nailed it. You would have been like, it's just a green Gomez. And I say good that they didn't give. I mean, as much as, yes, he would have looked sharp. He would have looked so much better than in the tights. He would have been great. But too soon. Too soon. Yeah. Maybe in his next appearance, when it's like, okay, now it's your role, now it's your suit, and you're not Gomez Adams anymore. Maybe. But it was a smart call on the producer's part not to have him dress in it. And it also then played in nicely with the Derby in that one scene there. So,
yeah. I'll go along with that one. And it's funny, I would never have looked at it that way, but once you say that, yeah, it seems to fall into place at that point.
Right.
And I'm also glad because I think Frank looks great in that suit, and we know that he really loved that suit.
Yes. I think it would have added insult to injury.
Yeah. Yes. I'm thinking to the movie when he has to go through the whole scene in the villain's lair where he's got to take the suit jacket off and sit it on the chair, and he has to turn around and show us that vest, and everything, that he really liked that outfit. So yeah, it's kind of funny. I don't know if they thought of that, because again, we interpreted that one scene as sort of a slam, Frank, but I'm glad that it worked out the way it did.
Yeah. Very briefly, you mentioned the writer, William P. D'Angelo. This is his only credit writing for Batman, but he actually was the associate producer of the series for most of it.
Yeah.
So he knows the style. He knows what they're looking for. He's also, had production credits in other comedies, Love American Style and Alice and Sledgehammer.
Right.
So.
Right. I give him a lot of credit for going with this Batman's anniversary thing. In some ways, I kind of wish that theme was brought back at the end to kind of give it closure or a circle,
Right.
I know I keep hammering on that, but it's such a fascinating aspect of this that I almost wish, that it was mentioned again at the very end, like, oh, Batman, we're so sorry that your anniversary was ruined, or something like that.
Right. I agree with you. Yeah, it would have been a way, or if anything else, maybe like have another ceremony or something, and the professor's there, and he's allowed to attend this thing before he heads off to jail. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, I think probably the best thing that would have fit the show is Gordon. Let's say Gordon brings it up. Oh, Batman, we're so sorry, that it was interrupted, but now we can have the ceremony and everything, blah, blah, blah. And then have Batman have one of his wonderful little statements in there, like to say, no need for that. I know that the people of Gotham, appreciate me, and I can serve them much better by continuing to do what I do, it's something humble like that. That would have been a really nice touch.
Right. Okay, so Bat Gadget. Did you have a favorite from this episode?
Yeah, it's got to be the heel-to-toe bat ride. Because I want to see how those work. I want to see the soles of their boots and see exactly how that's in there to see how that works.
I have to go because, again, it goes along with, like you say, with the heel-to-toe rockets. I'd have to say the remote back computer, even though it's not something that, they're pushing buttons on. It just actually Robin flips a switch, and I guess the back computer's been listening in on them, and so it's been working it out the whole time and such because the card spits out. But it's just cool. I just like the whole idea, and it was something I kind of wish they'd played up more in future episodes, but they didn't.
Well, and it's one of those gadgets that sort of predicts the future, as far as we have things like that.
Right.
Now, and it's just one of those times where the show was ahead of its time.
Yeah. The trivia question from Joel Eisner's official Batman Bat book, we know the answer to this already. It's what object of clothing does Professor Charm test his demolecularizer on, and that being the bowler hat. So,
watch that green derby on that chair over there. It's gone.
disappeared. That thing really works.
As I said it would.
Make it come back now.
It isn't yet possible. I haven't even begun work on the molecular restorer.
But
Frank Gorshin's head.
Yeah, Frank Gorshin's head. Oh my God. And make sure, folks, you're getting yourself a copy of this book. It's a great resource with episode titles, episode numbers and such, and just some great quotes from cast and production staff on the making of this show.
It is my Bible.
It's mine too as well, and you can find links for the chance to purchase it over on thebatcavepodcast.com if you're looking there. And of course, if you do purchase it through that link, you'll also be helping to support the podcast. He says, getting in his shameless plug.
That's okay.
All right, so it's the end of the episode. You're in the Batcave. You've watched this now with Batman. You turn to him and you sum up your feelings on this whole entire story by saying, holy what?
Holy substitution, Batman.
There you go. But in the end, you would have to agree with me. You liked this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm going to urge everybody to take another look at this. When I announced on Facebook and Twitter that I was going to be recording to this one and that I chose this one willingly, I got a couple of dubious, comments like, do you feel okay? It's another one of those knee-jerk reactions. You hear John Astin as the Riddler, and you go, oh, well, that can't be any good, or that,
Yeah.
I urge everybody to watch it. There's a lot of wonderful moments in this and a lot of very special things. Again, Batman's anniversary, underwater bat fight, the Batcave trophy room, and yes, John Astin as the Riddler. Watch it, compare and contrast it to Frank Gorshin. Go ahead and do it. And I think, you're going to come away feeling a bit differently about this episode.
I totally agree. And taking a page from, Riddler's interest in Shakespeare, as he did in one episode there, I'm going to say holy riddling shrift, because to confess, to be honest, I didn't like this episode as a kid because I did have the whole, he's not my Riddler, where's my Frank Gorshin type thing. If you go into this without the Frank Gorshin baggage, or as you say, fine, make the comparisons, but, understand that, Astin was coming into this and who knows, maybe he thought this was going to be, his next ticket because he just finished The Addams Family and such. It's not a bad episode, and he's really not a bad Riddler. He's just not Frank Gorshin. But as long as you can let that go and just come to appreciate what he brings to the table, it's actually pretty good. And frankly, you can't lose when they really do go back to the comic books, and they do for this one, and that also makes it a winner.
Yes, absolutely agree.
Yeah. So, Jim, how can people keep up with you? Once again, let them know. And how can they get their hands on Gotham City 14 Miles?
Well, head over to Amazon, and you can pick it up there in both print edition and e-copy. Sometimes there's some good deals on it there. And then also check out the Facebook page for the book. Just put in Gotham City 14 Miles, and the page will come up. We're having a blast. We're into 20 weeks of Mall Wars at the Gotham City 14 Miles page there. We're having a blast pitting all of the malls from the episodes against each other in a brackets form big battle.
I think I forgot to actually vote for this week's one, so I need to get over there myself.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So that's going to do it then for this episode of the Batcave Podcast. Tune in next time.
Next week, Cesar Romero returns as the Joker.
It's interesting. We're actually going through this sort of, rotation of the top four in recent episodes. I mean, we started out with Joker and Penguin, and then we had Catwoman, and then we had Penguin again teaming up with Marcia, and now it's the Riddler, and we've got the Joker and the Catwoman coming up in the next couple of episodes. And joining me for the next Joker episode, the Joker's Last Laugh, will be the return of our good friend and pinch hitter here when nobody else wants to take on the tough assignments, Mr. Robert Long. And I'm looking forward to that because even though it's called the Joker's Last Laugh, it really isn't his last one because he gets one more inning, so to speak, in the second season. Thanks for listening, chums. I don't have a bat phone, but you can contact the Batcave Podcast through its Facebook page, Twitter, email at thebatcavepodcast@gmail.com, or by phone at 888-866-9010. Subscribe to the podcast via Libsyn.com, that's Libsyn.com, or through iTunes. The Batcave Podcast is part of a series of pop culture podcasts from the Chronic Rift Network. Find them at chronicrift.com. So until next time, citizens, same bat time, same Batcave Podcast.